This is the New York City FC Pregame Live. Tonight, New York City head down to the Music City to take on Nashville SC. And now, here are your hosts, Glenn Crooks and Matty Lawrence.
Hey, Matty Lawrence. I'm Glenn Crooks. So what is happening, everybody? There's just one game left, and then it's the World Cup break. It's like 2 months, Matty. What are we going to be doing?
Well, watching the World Cup for most of it, we hope, and I think both of us hope that we're watching it all the way through. It'd be nice for England and the US to get a long way in the tournament. First of all,
can they meet in the final?
Have
we sorted that out yet?
I haven't sorted that out, but look, first and foremost, you want to get out of the group stages, don't you? So yeah, and also on top of that, we want NYCFC to have their three players that we assume will go: Truin, O'Neill if he's fit, and Matt Freese. It would be great to see those guys there. It's always great when you've got somebody to root for as well.
Well, we're going to get into that because Aiden O'Neill is somewhat of a question mark because of injury, but we'll get into that in a minute. And we're mentioning the World Cup, and I think we've got to start with the breaking news from today. So both The Guardian and The Athletic, a quartet of the boys who you all know, Pablo and Jeff Reuter, and then Tenario and Bogert. It's sort of, they both kind of had things either on addition to each other or simultaneously. So they all get credit for some pretty good investigating because they say they have the 26-man roster for the U.S. Now, next Tuesday, they're having this major gala at Pier 17 on the roof in New York City. From 1 to 3, it's a fan festival. From 3 to 4, Fox is going to be there to do the live introductions and the roster reveal, which apparently has already been revealed. So certainly some of the drama has been evaporated here. And then from 4 to 5, I'll be at a table for Sirius XMFC, and I've been told I'll get some interviews.
Nice.
And we've requested Pochettino. Who knows? Because I suppose the first question you have to ask Mauricio Pochettino, I think there are two. Because one is Gio Reyna is included, which, there was a lot of debate around that. Should he be? Shouldn't he be? So few minutes at Mönchengladbach, but still maybe the kind of player that could help. So there was all kinds of chatter about that. And then Diego Luna is not in, again, according to these reports. That's surprising, maybe just because of how Pochettino has declared his admiration for Luna. The broken nose, the swabs up his nose, and he comes back on and gets an assist before halftime. And that was a moment for that kid who said, "I'm going back in because this could be my chance," and he took advantage. And then he scored a couple of goals after that too. So.
He hasn't been as good in 2026. He's been injured a fair bit.
That's true.
I absolutely concur with you. If you're talking about taking Gio Reyna, who's only played just over 500 minutes of football for Mönchengladbach, if you're talking about taking him because he's got an ability that not many other players have got, if any other players, to unlock defences, then I think Luna offers you something different as well. I think if you look at match winners in that, and we're assuming this squad is correct.
Right. This is the reports.
Yes.
These are the reports from The Guardian and The Athletic. But go ahead, Matty.
Look, match winners, there's Pulisic, obviously, Weah every now and again. But apart from that, I would, if it was me, and you've got 26 players, I wouldn't be taking 10 defenders and not taking Diego Luna. But that's just me, and that's just what I think right now, this second. It's worth asking Pochettino the question. But again, we assume this is the correct lineup. England had it. They announced their lineup, I think, yesterday. And they had it where Harry Maguire and a few other people posted the fact that they were omitted the night before. And that is their want if they want to. I don't think it's good form. I don't think it shows your coach and your teammates a great deal of respect just because you're crying into your spilt milk, so to speak. I think you should wait for the team to be announced.
Well, but the team hasn't been announced, and now we see it. So if this is indeed, so there's 8 of the 26 players are from Major League Soccer, including Sebastian Berhalter, whose father is Greg Berhalter, who is the previous national team coach, who had a incident. I don't know how to express it because you'd really have to thoroughly get involved on both sides. But both the Berhalters and Reynas, that's Claudio Reyna, his wife and family, and Greg Berhalter, his wife and family, the boys, very close until the Qatar World Cup, where there was an incident. The reports were that Gio Reyna was nearly sent home just because of his response to not starting, that he was told that. And then there was something with Berhalter after that where he didn't name Reyna, but talked about him in general terms so you could figure it out. And the families sparred over that a little bit. So what I want to share with you here, Matty, is, and with the audience, I just interviewed the director of Us Against the World. His name is Rand Getlin, and I've watched the entire, 4 of the 5. The 5th has not been released yet, and only the 2 to the general public. And one of my questions, I sat down with him for an hour, and these it'll air in 2 parts on Sirius XM-FC starting next Tuesday, that there was not the story was not told about Greg, Gio, Berhalters, and Reyna. And the best I can say is that I thought he had a valid explanation, but this is a little over a couple of minutes long, but it's such a massive part of the story. I thought this, to me, seems to be a critical, if you're a storyteller, this is like a critical part of the story to me, because later we see Gio smiling. He's in the locker room. He's talking to Greg, and this is all after this has occurred. So what do you think about that? What was the reason for the omission?
Yeah, so this is part of what we discussed earlier. We have 600 hours of capture. You've got 26 players that make a roster, but over the course of 4 years, you probably have 50 guys, maybe more, 60, 70 guys who are a part of the roster. And life happens, and you have to make decisions on where you're going to spend your time. The reality is and we mentioned, we're trying to super serve U.S. soccer fans, of course, but more importantly, probably for the sport and the trajectory of the sport in America, we have to get people from outside the tent that have no idea what's been happening with this team ever, let alone that specific chapter. So there's no doubt it's a massive, meaningful chapter in the story of this U.S. soccer team, U.S. men's national team. The question is this the right vehicle to tell that story? And the answer is absolutely not. This is a team story that we're running through. Look, episode 1 is 2022 World Cup. Episode 2 is 2024 Copa. Episode 3 is the transition to Pochettino, the 25 Nations League, right? After he'd taken over. Episode 4 is the 2025 Gold Cup. And episode 5 is everything after Gold Cup up till kickoff, basically. You don't have time to dig into this situation because it's too complex. If we were going to do it right, I started my career as an investigative journalist. I've got a law degree. I take journalism really seriously. If I was going to do that story and we were going to spearhead that, you're talking a multi-hour investigative series. And the reason for that is you need to talk to the Reynas. One, you got to earn their trust and get them to speak about it candidly. You need to talk to the Berhalters, earn their trust and get them to talk about it and speak about it candidly. You got to go talk to the kids. You got to go talk to all of the people around them. You got to go talk to the reporters. You got to go, make sure that you talk to U.S. soccer. You're right. I mean, think about what it would actually take to do that story justice. So what happened is in the edit, we continued to try to figure out how can we spend enough time on this so that we tell the story properly, accurately, and most importantly, fairly. Remember, Gio was 19 years old when this all went down.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, we would have to spend an enormous amount of time, and we just didn't have it in the show. So, I don't think that it's accurate to say we did not touch it. We did. We said that there was a controversy between the Reynas and the Berhalters, and then we move on.
It's pretty interesting. And the only time Greg Berhalter asked him to turn the camera off during the time that he was there and with them was when he had a team meeting. And most of the time they were in the meetings, and it was the meeting where Gio Reyna apologized to his team. So there's a lot involved with this. I'm a documentary fan, whether it's Us Against the World or others that I've watched, but it has that all or nothing kind of feel to it,
I can buy into that as well, the reasoning behind not airing it more, because you're right, there is a finite amount of time. And also, if you're trying to bring other fans into the sport, why do you want to paint the team in a negative light in any way whatsoever? I absolutely understand. But at some point then, hopefully, we get back and we learn, though, and maybe we have a documentary on just that incident.
That would, and I think that's what he was saying.
That's kind of what he's getting at, alluding to.
That's a couple of hours of a show. I'm Glenn Crooks, along with Matty Lawrence. A little later on, beginning at 8:15, the start of our live commentary with the pregame show, Pascal Janssen, as New York City prepares for Nashville. All right, let's get to the injuries. And so I have this briefing every week, the one-on-one with Pascal for our pregame show. And so I led off with Maxi Moralez, who we learned did tear his ACL and is going to have surgery. And everybody's debating, that's another debate point, the fate of Maxi Moralez. So I brought that up with Pascal. Has he given you any indication, I don't know if you've had any kind of a conversation like this, about his future? Do you think he'll try to fight and come back?
I know he will. So obviously we spoke to each other quite a few times since it happened. It's very unfortunate for Maxi himself in the first place, but also for the team. You saw his value during the 25 season. You already saw his value again during the 26 season. It's a big loss for us as a team. Great personality on and off the pitch. But like I said, we talked to each other quite a bit after it happened. I'm not going to get into details, but one of his comments was, "I'll be back stronger than ever." So that shows the determination for what's ahead.
Well, that's fantastic to hear, because it would almost seem criminal if he weren't able to help Chris in that new building, right?
I think it's also in the back of his mind. But first, it's about getting healthy again, making sure that the knee gets well. And obviously, all our thoughts and prayers are with him in order to get him healthy again. And hopefully, in the future, he can still do the things that he loves to do.
So about 12 months out of surgery will be the start of preseason with the new calendar. So the change of calendar is almost perfectly timed for what we hope is the return of Maxi. And yeah, if he could lay a boot on that Etihad Park, that would be cool.
Yeah, look, I think anybody knows that Maxi will be desperate, or any footballer or any athlete will be desperate not to end on an injury. And Maxi Moralez has already recovered from this injury once, relatively recently. He knows he can do it. He knows he can do it at this stage of his career. And what he has offered in 25 and 26 to this side, if you can even get 50% of that, then he's worth having in your team, because part of the great thing about Maxi Moralez is his leadership. It's not actually what goes on the pitch, it's what goes on off it almost. He's worth having around, that's for certain. And we know that he will fight tooth and nail to get back.
Well, remember, this is what the supporters think of it. Yes. They want the Moralez district at that Etihad Park. Aiden O'Neill, he is unfortunately going to be questionable for the World Cup. The higher percentage, according to Pascal Janssen, is that he'll be fine and fit enough to play in the World Cup. But he said there is a possibility that he won't be ready. He's not with the club. Australia has a pre-camp, so he's down there rehabbing with them as they prepare for the World Cup, where they will play the U.S. In match number 2. So we had hoped for the Aiden O'Neill, Matt Freese thing, teammates going up against each other, as they have already in a friendly, but to do it in the World Cup. Kai Truen told us a couple of days ago that he hadn't been called in yet to the pre-camp, so he was hoping to get that call so that he would be leaving right after the game tonight. Keaton Parks, who suffered a groin pull when he took a shot in the pregame warm-up against Columbus at the U.S. Open Cup. He is down tonight, and Pascal is just simply hopeful that he'll be able to start training again somewhere around mid-June. That's when teams are starting to come back from this World Cup break to start training again. So Parks, the way he put it, though, it's not as bad as they first thought. So that's kind of interesting.
It is, and that's great. And we hope that the likes of Parks, Martinez maybe, Kevin O'Toole will be back and fit, because it is, of course, it's incredibly unusual to have this 2-month break, but it actually absolutely suits some of the NYCFC players and other players around MLS who are injured. It suits them absolutely perfectly. 2 months' time, get back at it, and you feel that Parks, O'Toole, Malachi Jones will be even fitter, Pereira will be even fitter. It should look good for NYCFC in the second part of the season.
John Rojas chiming in. No one can be debating what's next for Maxi. He has done and put in so much for the sport and the club. So if he's ready to go, I don't think anybody from the club is going to halt the progress and the hope that he can play another season and play in that new park. So it's Nashville tonight. So Nashville's had a pretty good year.
Yes.
I mean, they've had a pretty good. Let me see if I've got a sheet of paper here that lists. So 2025. So under BJ Callahan, who you have to say is doing a fantastic job. They won the U.S. Open Cup last year. These are all club records for Charlotte. 22 wins, all competitions, 16 regular season wins, 12 home wins, where they are undefeated this year, 5 wins and a draw. They had a 15-match unbeaten streak, all competitions. 12 of those were in MLS play, 75 goals in all competitions, and 61 MLS regular season goals, which was almost double what they had scored the year before. So things are going well, and they are number 1 overall in MLS going into this game tonight. So if they get the victory, they'll remain there. They've got Vancouver and San Jose right on their heels.
Look, they're a very good team. We know that. We know they've got a very good head coach. And the likes of Mukhtar Surridge, who we assume will be on the bench, not fit enough to start. Espinoza, they've got some wonderful players.
Surridge is on the bench. Yeah, we have the starters now too, so we need to talk about the New York City starters.
And
here.
look, they're dealing with injuries as well at Nashville, and they're still right there at the forefront. They've won 9 games out of 13 already. You look and you say 16 MLS regular wins was the club record. You fancy them to break that already. They only need to get 8 more, and they've got another 21 games to do it. Yeah. So they are looking very, very strong right now, Nashville, especially at home. You're right.
But look, Andy Nahar is out.
Yep,
Eddie Tagseth, I know you like him in the midfield, out. Patrick Yazbek, I've talked to people who see a lot of games, and they feel he might be the best midfielder in the league. He's out. And he's highly questionable for the World Cup with Australia as well. So these poor Australians, that's 2 in the midfield, Yazbek and O'Neill, who they may lose, which will be...
well, I think an Australian boy got injured for Middlesbrough today. Was it McGree?
I didn't know he got injured. I know he was playing.
He got injured right at the end. He pulled a hamstring.
And Yazbek, talk about irony. How many players are going to get hurt in pre-game warm-up? He was hurt in a pre-game warm-up. Keaton Parks, pre-game warm-up. Tylus Magno, pre-game warm-up for New York City FC. That last year in Nashville, pretty interesting game. Down 2-0 at the half, New York City came back and got the 2-2 draw. And more irony, Keaton Parks was the key factor. He came in off the bench to start the second half, and his ability to swing things in midfield really made the difference, and you get a 2-2 draw.
Yeah, it was that really was a game of 2 halves. It's a shame Keaton's not available, obviously. We know why not. But this is a stern test, especially after being away from home in the US Open Cup, losing that game, then straight down to Nashville. There's the traveling involved as well. Games really jam-packed in, and also not the biggest of squads. We know that, and Pascal's not going to use it as an excuse. All the games, the compacted schedule, not the biggest of squads.
Why don't we just give the bench here? All right,
there you go.
So we're going to get to the starters. Here's the bench, and this is no disrespect to any of these players. It's just a very inexperienced bench. Kevin Pierre, Hannes Wolf is on the bench tonight. Arnau Farnos and Malachi Jones are getting starts. Okay, so Wolf's on the bench. There's experience. Strahinja Tanasiewicz, very few minutes played this year. Maximo Carrizo, Thomas Romero is your backup keeper. Johnny Shore, who started in place of Parks' emergency start against Columbus on Wednesday, 19 years old. Cameron Acito, out of Duke University, a homegrown player. He is on the bench. Peter Molinari, who traveled to... which match was that? The most recent road game, Charlotte. He traveled, did not play. He was there in a case of an emergency. And Seymour Reed. That's the bench. And the starters, Freeze, Cavallo, Martins, the captain, Gray, Gustavo, Truin, Perea. So that's all normal. Fernandez, Mercado, Ojeda. But Malachi Jones and Arnau Farnos, he's going to have a pretty instrumental role in trying to generate things in the attack. You see him as probably the number 10.
I think he will play as the number 10. I think they'll leave Nico Fernandez Macau up front. What you do know, looking down at that, is you'd be very surprised if Malachi Jones or Farnaus can play 90. So they're two players who are going to have to come off.
Right.
I'd be surprised.
And then Pereira I don't know if he can go 90 yet.
So we're already talking about 3 substitutions you need.
Yeah.
Farnhouse, you'd have thought 60 to 75. You'd have probably thought about the same for Malachi Jones as well. So yes, so the bench is going to be tested as well, you would have thought. And look, Nashville are a very, very dominant team, and they've got, you look down at their bench and they've got some real quality. Wheel, Surridge, Jack Maher, they've got some good players, or more experienced anyway.
Alex Buil, who's making the headlines recently because of he's friends with Timothy Shalloway, and they just did an Adidas commercial together or something. So that's all over the place. That's all I got on that. But they played youth soccer together in Manhattan. That's fairly
pretty
cool.
Yeah, that is.
That is fairly cool. I'll give him to that. And Buil said he has a lot more Instagram followers since he's been connected to Chalamet. Chalamet, right?
Chalamet, yeah. Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah. No, he's good. I just I screw up his name a lot of times. Do you know there's an Apple iPhone 17 Pro game coming out? They're going to film the entire game tonight between the Galaxy and Houston Dynamo on the iPhone. So they'll have multiple iPhones, but the entire game is going to be iPhone. So that'll be interesting to see. I kind of, I like conceptual stuff like that. I can dig that. They did it with a baseball game last September, but they didn't do it with just iPhones all over the park. They did it kind of intermittently. So this is the whole broadcast. So if you want to stay up late for that, there you go. It's the iPhone broadcast. Robert Lewandowski scores in his final game for Barca. Of course he did. Is he on his way to the Chicago Fire? That's a question. Harry Kane gets a hat trick in Bayern's Cup final over Stuttgart. Harry Kane is scoring more than a goal a game.
Yeah. 61 in 56 in all competitions. 36 in 31 games in the Bundesliga, 14 goals in 13 games in the Champions League.
Now,
so
if he goes crazy, if he goes crazy in the World Cup and he gets the proper service and everything that's necessary, that's got to be a bonus and maybe a central figure in England, winning their second World Cup.
Yeah, who knows? I hope so. But you're right. You absolutely hit the nail on the head. He needs the service, and I hope the service comes to him. But yeah, the season he's had is absolutely phenomenal. I say he's done it at the highest level, over a goal per game in the Champions League, not just the Bundesliga, in the Champions League. So yeah, and then the hat trick today, obviously. So they won the Cup and League double today.
Very nice. And we've got Daniel Fradley, the former New York City assistant, who is there, Vincent Kompany's assistant. And congratulations to all of them. We've got history made in the EFL promotional playoff final today as Middlesbrough. They were the first team to lose in the semifinals and then the playoff final. Because
I'll be pleased you brought that up.
Yeah. So they, Hull City wins that game, and Middlesbrough getting back in because Southampton was suspended or removed. I don't know what do you call it, because they had. I think I've got. Let me just throw this guy up here. This was part of the story anyway.
Yeah.
They had their practice spied on. Southampton spying on Middlesbrough practice, but it turns out they spied on a couple of other practices too.
That's hardly top level spying either, is it?
that is classic, isn't it? Excuse me. Hey, get the nephew. Can you get our nephew out to stand behind the tree?
Exactly.
Oh my God. I guess maybe trying to be incognito, but it didn't work. Pep Guardiola announces that he's departing Manchester City after 10 years. So when I spoke to Pascal Janssen in the preseason, he talked about visiting Pep in the winter break and how it was a dream for him to sit down with Pep. So I asked him about Pep Guardiola in our pregame briefing. I wonder, that was your first sit-down meeting with him and being able to discuss the game, but how has he influenced your coaching in general? I mean, there is that Dutch background, played for Cruyff, that whole thing, and took over some of those Dutch elements. But what has he meant to you?
One of the greatest inspirations, obviously. I see a term here in the US come by quite often, and that is the GOAT. And I think, with all due respect for all the other coaches, but in this time and age, I think he is the true GOAT of them all, of us all as coaches. The way he influenced the game, his thought process, trying to find new impulses every season, created a lot of a lot of influence on the game in general. That means in possession, out of possession, shapes on field, attacking shape, defensive shapes, always trying to find new ways to implement into the game, and always challenging the other coaches to deal with those issues. So he's been a big inspiration to myself, but I think to many coaches in the world.
Well put, Gaffer.
Yeah.
Well put. Put this up, too, because Hannes Wolf is not in the 11 and Malachi Jones in his place. And, Matty, what are your thoughts on that? And Farnos, you already gave your attacking mid number 10 thoughts on Farnos, but what do you think about Wolf out?
I'm a little surprised, maybe, but Malachi Jones has been hugely influential. I don't want to sit on the fence. I've got no problem with Malachi Jones starting the game. We know that Hannes Wolf, when he comes off the bench, because he will at some point, you would assume for Malachi Jones, he will give his all, and he has the ability to change the game. Malachi Jones has probably just about earned the right to wear that shirt because of how good he's been recently. Let's see what he does from the start. He's normally more influential when he comes off the bench, in my opinion. Let's see what he does with a start, and you assume he'll do 60 to 75 minutes tonight.
Well, we began our NYCFC pregame live with U.S. men's national team news as Pablo Maurer and Jeff Ruder of The Guardian and Paul Tenorio and Tom Bogert of The Athletic almost simultaneously broke stories that and so you'd have to think that this indeed, and I'm going to show it again if you're just listening and can't see it, we will go through it a little bit here as we close, but the 26-player roster, their sources say this is it. Gio Reyna in, Diego Luna out. I think that's mostly the story that will be discussed, and that nearly 40% of the roster, Matty, is backs. Yeah. I mean, and Miles Robinson makes the grade, even though it hasn't gone particularly well with him this season, especially, and his team too, Atlanta United.
That's an understatement for Miles Robinson personally, for somebody who gets paid so much money, for somebody who is such a good defender. They've shipped far too many goals of FC since that. He is in the team because of what he's done for the US men's national team in previous games and previous tournaments. It's got absolutely nothing to do with what he's done in 2026, because he wouldn't be anywhere near the squad if it was just on recent play or on the play of this calendar year. That's for certain, because he's been poor.
And I'm happy to see Austin Trusty, Celtic. And, if you've watched, I get to watch some of their matches, and I think he's very solid, calm, good with his feet. Yep. He's got all the qualities, I think, that can help out. Joe Scally. So there are two former New York City Academy players. That's Gio Reyna and Joe Scally, and Scally a homegrown as well, and a New York City senior player, Matt Freese. So three New York City brethren are on the squad too out of the 26.
Well, it's just great to have affirmation for the academy system, and then for NYCFC as a whole, isn't it? As a manager, as a head coach, as Pascal Janssen is, he wants as many players as possible. Yes, he loses players at times for international duty, but it just looks so much better for your team as a whole if players are making their way to the World Cup or to national teams. And yeah, that's great for NYCFC there. Those three, and then you hope Trewin and O'Neill as well for Australia. I know slightly different, but you're vouching for those guys or vying for those guys to get in too.
And we talked about the injured players. We led off with Maxi Morales, who believes he's coming back better than ever.
He will.
Added to the injury report is another defender. He's sitting right next to me, Matty Lawrence, on the injured list, but he was questionable. But here he is. Ruptured Achilles, surgery just 2 days ago?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. And here he is. So if he starts slurring his words in the second half,
blame the tramadol.
You know why, because our commentary is coming up. It starts at 8:15 pregame show presented by Ford with Pascal Janssen, and that will be followed by our live commentary with the kickoff at 8:40 p.m. Eastern time. Farnos and Jones, the changes in the starting 11 for the New York City Football Club as they play at Nashville. Tough assignment. Yeah. Let's see how it goes. Thank you so much for joining us. If I didn't get to everybody's question, we'll get around to you. We're going to stay and do some things. Yeah. We have our New York City FC coffee break every Monday, and we'll have it again this Monday at 11 a.m. So we'll be doing that, and we'll have a chance to talk and chat then. So for Matty, I'm Glenn. Thanks for being here. Look forward to talking to you soon, and enjoy the game, everybody.